Okay, so that should be working in just a sec. As I do, I'm here a few minutes early just to give people a chance to hop on. So good morning, good morning. I hope everyone is doing well this morning. So give about 2 minutes and then we'll get started. Perfect. There we are. I hope everybody is doing well. Kind of said that a second ago, but hey, it's the time where I'm waiting to see what happens. So I don't have to have anything be super concise. I will say, I hope everybody's having fun with migration so far. If you haven't seen any, there are plenty of hummingbirds that are starting to come this way. We've had a lot of customers say they've had their first sightings of the season. And don't be surprised if the activity is very quiet. A lot of the times when it's this early, sometimes it's like a lot of the individuals that are still migrating up north before they really start to settle. So just have your nectar out and ready and fresh, which is the most important part. Definitely keep an eye on that every day, every other day, just to make sure everything looks good. But yeah, migration is definitely on the way. I know a lot of people have seen very different types of warblers. I think I heard my first wood thrush this morning, which I absolutely love them to pieces. So I'm very excited about that. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. If you guys have been paying attention, now's the time because you never know who's going to pass through your yard. Hence the whole reason we're doing this presentation too. Good morning. Hope you're doing well today. We're giving it another minute before we hop on and get started. So thank you for your patience there. Um, yeah, so we're just gonna give it a second. I see everybody starting to hop on, which is perfect. So, and it is 8:30, so I'll stop rambling and I'll actually ramble about what I'm supposed to be here for, which is Grosbeaks. So, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. My name is Jolene. I'm a certified songbird feeding specialist with Wild Birds Unlimited of Concord, and today we will be talking about grosbeaks, which is honestly going to be a lot of fun. I think I timed it well because usually they migrate through the Piedmont area in kind of late April, early May. So this will hopefully get you all up to date on what you should know as they pass through. So if you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to drop a comment as we get started, and I'll be paying attention to that as we go on as well. So something that I do find really interesting about grosbeaks, of all the birds that we've discussed so far, oftentimes they're all in the same family. That is not at all the case for grosbeaks. Grosbeaks decided to be a little bit different because honestly, we name birds before we always figure out where they fall in line and who they are closest related to. So it is not uncommon for this to sometimes happen. The reason a lot of birds are called grosbeaks is because it's like, I think from the French pronunciation that eventually meant like a thick bill, which is very true. If you've seen any of these birds, they do have a very thick bill in comparison to their overall head structure. So for these guys, they're found in two different families. There are some found in family Cardinalidae, which includes our cardinals, tanagers, and buntings, and it also includes the rose-breasted grosbeak, the blue grosbeak, and the black-headed grosbeaks as well. Meanwhile, there are others that are found in the family Fringillidae, which includes our finches, redpolls, and crossbills. And that one includes the pine and evening grosbeak. So there are grosbeaks that are a little bit more similar to like cardinals and buntings, and then those that are a little bit more related to finches and redpolls, which I find to be really interesting in general. Our focus is going to be on those that are primarily in our range, which includes the rose-breasted and the blue grosbeak, if you did not know that. First off, with the rose-breasted grosbeak, we can see with their migration map here, or their range map in general, where they can be found throughout the year. So, for these birds in the kind of orange range that pulls up into central Canada and a little bit of the central U.S. as well as northeast U.S., that is all of their breeding range. So that is where they're going to be going for nesting season. So in a few weeks' time, that is going to be where their destination is. You'll see that the nesting range also sweeps down into the Appalachian Mountains. So that is why why North Carolina is really fun is because you'll have a lot of these birds pass through, but you can still find them in the Appalachian area during the summertime if you choose to go there, which is really cool. The yellow area in their map is where they migrate through. So this is where you can get potential sightings for a few days to a week or so before they keep moving on. Meanwhile, you've also got the blue portion of their range, which is their wintering range. This is where they are coming from currently in the springtime. So this is all the way down in through Central and South America as well as the Caribbean islands. So these guys are definitely making quite the flight in order to get where they need to be, which is really cool. Another thing about migration is that it doesn't all happen at the same time for every single species. Now, there's definitely periods of time in migration where it's very busy and you have a lot of different species moving at one time, but sometimes it goes kind of in steps, right? So what'll happen is you'll have some birds that migrate early while others migrate late. So for example, we have hummingbirds, again, that are coming in through the area, while we have white-throated sparrows, who are a winter species here, that we can still hear that have not made any moves yet. Grosbeaks are going to be on that later portion as well, where they're going to migrate a little bit later in comparison to some other species as well. Good morning, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So it's just really fun to see like the steps that different birds take depending on the time of year. Now, for rose-breasted grosbeaks, these birds do prefer forest or shrubby woodland, so they do like some canopy cover, they do like some shrubby habitat, and oftentimes they do enjoy being near a water source of some kind as well too. So whether that's ponds, streams, lakes, or if you've got like a good bird bath, who knows? But definitely on the migration path, they can sometimes be a little less picky as long as it is in that kind of wooded habitat as well. So along with the rose-breasted grosbeak that we also get the blue grosbeak, which is really fun. Oftentimes these birds are confused with indigo buntings, which is fair. Their closest relative is lazuli bunting, so it makes sense as to why it can be a little bit confusing there. Their map is very interesting as well. So they don't go nearly as far as the rose-breasted grosbeak, but they do hit a lot of the lower section of the United States, and they come up a little bit more north in the Midwest as well, which is really interesting. You've got a little bit more yellow in regards to their migration, so where you can see them for a short amount of time. And then they still have a lot of that wintering area between Mexico and Central America, as well as the Caribbean too. The purple location is where they can be found year-round as well. And unlike the rose-breasted grosbeaks, these birds prefer very little canopy cover. They prefer more shrubby habitat, and they prefer a lot more of grassland habitat, which is something that the rose-breasted does not like at all. So basically, these two kind of flip-flop in their preferences, and we'll kind of find that throughout this entire presentation, which I find to be really interesting too. So when it comes to ID, in some cases it's very obvious when you see the male, but it is good to kind of point out different things, especially when we come around to the females. First off, in general, these birds are a very stocky kind of finch-like build. They're very close to cardinal size, but they have a shorter tail in comparison. They do have a very thick bill, and in the case of the rose-breasted grosbeak, that bill is very pale in coloration, so it's very striking against the overall plumage on their body, especially with the males. For male rose-breasted grosbeaks, they do have a black head and black wings, as well as white wing bars that can be seen. And the obviously main indicator of their name is that rose breast. So a lot of the times, if you've never seen these birds, that rose breast can be very frightening because you think something's wrong, but that is just the color of their plumage as well. The red breast on the white background definitely makes it very contrasting and very surprising to see for that first time. But again, they are super gorgeous birds and very fun to see. Meanwhile, that is your male. Then we've got the female, who is completely opposite. So these birds are sexually dimorphic, which means you can tell the difference between your males and your females. The females look a lot like house finches, but they're very big house finches. So oftentimes, if you see these birds in your yard, you'll go, oh, that's just a house finch. You look away and go, wait a minute, that finch is a lot larger than I saw yesterday. And that's because, of course, it's not a finch. But for the female rose-breasted grosbeaks, they still have that pale bill, which is going to be a lot brighter in comparison to the rest of its plumage, which for house finches, they have like the same colored bill as like with most of their feathers. It doesn't stand out as much. And along with that, they do have a white eyebrow stripe and kind of a white throat stripe that goes down there as well too. You could kind of argue and say like they look very close to purple finches as well, but that white throat stripe does make them very different between the two. You also have the white wing bars on the females as well as you do the males. When it comes to their song, these birds have a very beautiful kind of whistling song. Some people compare them to American robins, but they're very fast-paced with a lot of higher and lower notes, but it's very quick as well too. Let me see where I'm at. That is going to be too loud, I know for certain. Okay, hold on. You think I'd have this stuff together. I don't. All right, let's see. So a very rambling kind of song, but absolutely gorgeous, and it's kind of just that smooth whistling. They do also have a call, which it kind of sounds like a chink noise. But again, with a lot of calls, that can be very hard to navigate if you're not sure. Because they can all sound very similar, and if you're not sure what you're looking for, that can be a little painful to identify. With your blue grosbeaks, these birds again get confused very often with indigo buntings. They also, oh goodness, they do work in the same habitat, so they do prefer those open grassland habitats. They have a very similar diet, and of course, they've got a very similar color as well, so it's not surprising to see that. But there are some differences with these birds in general. Again, the beak shape is going to be a very big giveaway. With grosbeaks, that beak is honestly quite large in comparison to their head. The buntings do have a very large bill as well, but it's more conical and a little bit more straight and pointed. For male blue grosbeaks, they do have the blue head and the back. Their wings are black along with their tail feathers, and the main thing that gives them away is that they do have a brown wing bar. Kind of looks like it's in the shoulder area, but they do have like some streaking that goes throughout. But that brown wing bar is going to be a big giveaway if you're uncertain about any of the other factors. The female blue grosbeak, again, they are sexually dimorphic, so they look very different, and the same thing goes for indigo bunting, so it's always going to be a fun time to identify. They are more of that kind of light brown cinnamon color. They have brown wing bars just like the male does, so in the same placement, you can see those brown wing bars, and unlike the indigo buntings, there is no streaking on the belly, so that is going to be the main giveaway between your female blue grosbeak and your indigo buntings as well. In regards to their song, so this varies with species. Rose-breasted grosbeak males and females do both sing, and they both sing quite often. It's very important for like pair bonding and stuff like that as well. For blue grosbeaks, only the males will sing. Oftentimes they'll do it kind of hidden, so you don't always see them when they sing, or if they know that you're watching, they kind of go back into that brush to hide. But their song is also quite lovely. It's a little bit more of kind of a raspy or like a buzz sound. And it's a little bit shorter, but it does kind of sound similar as well. So much more rapid pace, and kind of that buzz quality to it. So there is the chance that you can hear both of those going on during this time of year, especially during kind of as they're getting settled into nesting habitats too. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of different grosbeaks that can be found throughout North America, and this is just a few of them. Primarily, like I said, they are split up into two different families. So the rose-breasted, the blue, and the black-headed grosbeak, which is on the left, are both found in the same family. You'll notice that overall their body shape is very similar, as well as that beak shape too. The black-headed grosbeak is found more in central and western U.S., so I'm not going to be talking about them as much today, but their range does overlap a little bit with the rose-breasted grosbeak, so it is not uncommon to find them in the same area or to find hybrids of rose-breasted and black-headed grosbeaks too. So they will sometimes nest and hybridize there, which is really interesting if you ever see any of those. And hybrids often take characteristics of both parents, so you can see markings from both species, and it's not uncommon for songs to sound a little bit similar to both, or to have different characteristics mixed in, which is, again, really cool. So besides that, we also have the two grosbeaks that are in the finch family Fringillidae. So that includes the pine grosbeak and the evening grosbeak. You can tell that even though these birds do also have very thick and obvious bills, that they do look a little bit different in regards to posture and overall shape, just a smidge, compared to like the other grosbeaks that we talked about.
The pine grosbeak is found more in northern range, so in Canada and some of the northern states. Same with the evening grosbeak, although the evening grosbeak can sometimes be present in North Carolina during eruptions. So eruptions are basically when resources are not as easily available during like a winter season, that the birds will push out of their normal range and go farther out to try and find those resources. So occasionally we can get an evening grosbeak as far as North Carolina. Just as an example of these eruptions, if anybody was feeding back in 2020, we had an eruption of pine siskins, which we don't usually get. They can be found in North Carolina, but they were all over the place that year. And that was because of one of those eruptions that just happened naturally over the course of like a certain amount of years and everything like that as well. So that can occasionally happen as well. And these are all different males of these species. So now these are what the females look like. So again, all of your males and females do look different. Oftentimes the females look a little bit more subdued in coloration because they don't want to get caught, especially if they're nesting or trying to kind of incubate the young as well too. So they do kind of have those lower colors. The black-headed grosbeak female, again, looks very similar to the rose-breasted grosbeak female. The main difference between the two is the amount of streaking on the belly, and the black-headed grosbeak female does not have as much. It's more kind of like buff in like coloration on that white eye stripe as well. So definitely very similar. We don't have to worry about that because they're not really in our range, but for anybody that lives more in central US or out west, depending on where those ranges match up, might be in for a little bit of trouble there. When it comes to their diet, these birds are primarily omnivorous, so they'll take advantage of quite a few different things, such as insects, fruits, and seeds. The thick conical bill that they have makes it very helpful to not only get very large insects, such as larger grasshoppers and like mantids and things like that, but they also have a lot of dexterity for cracking open different fruits, pulling off the petals of leaves and flowers, and accessing the seed that they're looking for. So they've got a lot of dexterity with that thick bill. When it comes to the different types of foraging strategies, again, these birds are found in different habitats. So the blue grosbeak is going to focus more on insect activity as well as grass seeds or anything like that as well too. So you can find them perched on the top of a grass stalk eating those seeds. You can find them kind of hovering in place as they're gleaning insects off of a leaf or anything like that as well. So you can find both of them. I'm going to play that one more time while I'm talking. You can find them doing both and looking for those areas since they have more of that open habitat. Something that is interesting about blue grosbeaks is that their gait and when they walk is a little weird. So they're not super comfortable just straight up walking. A lot of the times they will kind of hop. Or if they're on a branch, they'll kind of like sidle along it. If you've ever seen a hummingbird kind of do that same thing, is they don't really like to walk easily. It's just kind of slightly awkward. So that does occur. Meanwhile, with rose-breasted grosbeaks, they go for a mix of fruit and insect activity. Not that they won't also go for seeds, but they have a little bit more of a varied diet in comparison. So again, they have no problem taking off the flesh of the seed or the fruit and going for like the seed inside or whatever they want to do. They're pretty dexterous at that point as well, which is really fun. And something that is very interesting as well is that oftentimes you can find your male and female grosbeaks foraging in different areas of the same spot, right? So that is one of them eating fruit. And then I thought this one was fun. You got a grosbeak taking advantage of, I think, some midge flies that are caught in a spider web. So, you know, opportunistic is never a bad thing to be, especially when it comes to getting different resources and things. But what people found is that rose-breasted grosbeak males will eat along the larger branches and twigs of a tree, while female rose-breasted grosbeaks focus on the canopy and the leaves up there or on the ground as well too. So they kind of separate and divide and conquer depending on what they're foraging for, which is also very interesting. Let's see there. Now, of course, like I mentioned, in a few weeks, a lot of these birds are going to be starting to move through this area in order to get to their nesting habitat. Oftentimes, the males will arrive first. They will sometimes come in those foraging flocks before they kind of start settling and establishing certain territories. Males will often sing to establish their territories and keep other competing males away. There's not a lot of courtship practices that are recorded. One that I did find that was pretty interesting is usually in a lot of bird species, the male has to work hard to get the female's attention. But apparently, in the rose-breasted grosbeak's case, the males will often sing. The females will approach showing that they're interested, and the males will often ignore them or fly away and rebuke them like twice before accepting. So oftentimes it does lead to a chase, and there are some displays that occur where the male does show off that red breast that he has as well too, showing like the feather condition and everything like that as well. So really interesting strategy on the rose-breasted grosbeak's part, but that does make it very interesting. So for a lot of these birds, once they get here and once they get settled, breeding season usually begins mid to late May, and sometimes nesting starts in July. So again, we're just working on that migration section. We're not going to see a lot of the rose-breasted nesting, but we can see some blue grosbeak nesting if you are in, again, the right habitat. So you might have to do some birding for that one. What a shame, but that's always a good time, right? In most cases, you'll have both the male and the female assist with building. The rose-breasted grosbeaks, male and females work together well and often sing a lot while they do so. The blue grosbeaks, sometimes you have a mix where maybe the male will do more building and then the female takes over, and vice versa. So it's interesting to see that as well. When we get to finding the nesting spot, oftentimes your blue grosbeaks will nest a little bit lower in shrub habitats, while your rose-breasted grosbeaks can pick a difference in height, sometimes as high as 20 feet up. Rose-breasted grosbeaks make a very loose cup nest, which is really interesting because you can see all the way through the bottom, and it has a lot of the material that you're used to seeing in a nest, such as twigs, coarse grasses, and decayed leaves. It can take them up to 4 to 9 days to finalize the nest. Meanwhile, blue grosbeaks make a very compact woven cup nest, so you're not going to be able to see through the bottom of this thing at all. They do a mix of like the normal things you'd expect: twigs, rootlets, dead leaves, corn husks, because again, they do prefer more of that open grassland habitat, so it's not uncommon to have farmland nearby. Not only that, but they'll also take advantage of cotton, paper, polystyrene, other things as well, and snakeskin. So they definitely have nests that you can actually identify if you ever see them out in the field, which is really interesting because not every bird is going to utilize snakeskin. There are other species that do, but it does kind of definitely narrow it down. And like I mentioned before, the rose-breasted grosbeaks are a little bit more equal in the division of labor, I guess, in regards to incubating the eggs and everything. So the male and the female will switch off and kind of share that incubation. So when we get to the nest being built and we start laying the eggs, these birds have 1 to 2 broods. Oftentimes it's usually just one, but if they're early enough in the season, if food is good, and or if anything happened to that first nest, they can have a second one. Oftentimes they have 2 to 5 eggs each, usually a bluish white kind of coloration or sometimes a greenish blue. Rose-breasted grosbeaks have speckles on theirs, while blue grosbeaks usually do not. So it does kind of vary a little bit there. When all the eggs are laid, incubation starts, and it takes anywhere from 12 to 14 days. And I just wanted to mention this as well, in the nest photo up top, this is a rose-breasted grosbeak nest. You can see what I was talking about, how thin the layer is of material that they use. So you can see straight through the bottom of the nest. But again, it works well for them, and that's just kind of what they've continued to do. So that's always just really cool to pay attention to. Not every bird builds a nest the same way, which is fun. When they do lay their eggs, there is also the chance of being parasitized by brown-headed cowbirds, more so with the blue grosbeaks than the rose-breasted, just with locations and things like that as well. In these cases, a lot of people worry that, like, oh, when they say they've been parasitized, that means, like, the cowbird always wins. That's not always the case. Blue grosbeaks, if they know what they're dealing with and can identify a cowbird egg, sometimes they will eject the cowbird egg from the nest. Other times they might build on top of it. Or in some cases, because these are larger birds and they are able to their diet is a little bit more supportive of like feeding all of the young. Sometimes they can rear both the brown-headed cowbird young with their own young as well too, depending on how that season is doing. So definitely results vary depending on who's in charge. But once all of the young hatch, they are altricial young. So you can see in the bottom right here, they're blind. These are a few days old, but they're usually blind, naked, defenseless, require a lot of parental care as well too. And that usually takes 9 to 13 days. So again, a little bit less than 2 weeks on that front before they fledge. If they are having a second brood, sometimes when these birds fledge, the male will take care of the fledglings while the female builds a new nest and renests as well. So it kind of depends on what's going on there and how they're doing. But from that point, when the young do fledge, they are dependent on the parents for another 3 weeks. So they will kind of follow the parents around. Oftentimes, in this case, you will have young that look a lot like the females, which is usually the case because you don't want to be young and have a lot of bright coloration for any potential predators to see. So they do hang around with the parents for about 3 weeks before they kind of head out, and they will make their own flocks with other young grosbeaks as well. Once everything is said and done with nesting, it's not uncommon for all of the young and the adults to kind of meet up in larger flocks before kind of moving out for migration as well too. Let me see, that's all there. Now, something else that's really cool about grosbeaks in general is that they also have delayed plumage maturation. So once the young fledge, for a lot of songbirds, oftentimes later in that season, they'll get their adult molt and they look a lot like all the other males or females that are like the mature ones, for example. But that is not the case for the grosbeaks. They often have it where once they're a year old or we get to that next breeding season, they still have their juvenile plumage. So they don't start to get that adult plumage until after their first kind of like near the tail end of that first breeding season, so 10 to 12 months of age. Because again, a lot of these birds are getting started nesting in May and they finally fledge depending on the timing in July. So by the time they get started, they still haven't quite gotten all their plumage in. So they will still try to nest that first season, but they're often not as successful as the older males because it shows they don't have as much of the experience or might not have the qualities that the adult males or females are looking for. So in this case, you can see what they look like when they're in that hodgepodge stage of still getting all their adult plumage, but not quite there yet. So if you ever see this, that's kind of what's going on. Usually the males are starting to get that really bright plumage in. So for the blue grosbeaks, you can see that they're starting to get those blue feathers. It's going to be a spotted, speckled mess at first before they start to get everything in. And the rose-breasted grosbeaks are a lot of fun to watch because you have that red breast, some of the black feathers are along the brown ones as well that they haven't finished getting all their feathers in. So really fun to see that. If you see that, don't be surprised. That's normal behavior for these birds as well. So when it comes to attracting these birds to your yard, how do we do it? It's kind of hit or miss depending on where they're going, but we can definitely be prepared with all the foods that they do enjoy. So keep in mind with migration, especially for rose-breasted grosbeaks, these birds are coming through in like late April, early May, and they also leave, so passing back through in October and November. Because of that large bill, it makes it very easy for them to go for a variety of seed options, such as sunflower or safflower. They are a slightly larger bird as well, so again, close to cardinal size, so having something that's comfortable for them to perch on will also be very helpful. Tray or platform feeders, hopper feeders that have a good perch, it's easy for them to kind of feed forward on, or tube feeders that have kind of a larger extended perch or tray is also very helpful. If the tube feeder only has like the little kind of peg perching option, that's going to be a little uncomfortable for your larger birds. And of course, because this is during migration, you've also got some birds that might go for a little bit of a variety of different things. So offering suets, whether those are cakes, cylinders, or like bark butter bits that you can mix with any seed blend and they're easy for the birds to nab. You can do peanuts, as long as they're, you can do de-shelled peanuts for these guys. Raw or roasted and unsalted is also good. Both of these options are high in fats, which are great for them as they're migrating and passing through. Or you can also do jelly, because again, rose-breasted grosbeaks do go for a lot of fruit as well. Any jelly is good. A lot of people focus on grape jelly. As long as it's not something that has like sugar free or sugar substitutes, just go for straight jelly. Don't do jam, as the larger pieces of the jam can sometimes make it more of a mess and harder for the birds to clean up. And you don't want to do a lot of jelly. Just do, if you do like a cup feeder, just do like a tablespoon of jelly. Just see how it goes. Just because you don't want them to fall in it and make a mess of themselves as well. So those are all definitely good options there. In regards to blue grosbeaks, even though we do have them in the summertime, they prefer, again, more of that grassland kind of open habitat. So if you don't live in those areas, you may not see them in general, but they too are a huge fan of different types of sunflowers and safflowers. So a lot of that same food option would work for them as well. And with that said, that's kind of all I have to add today on the Grosbeaks. For listening and being patient, if any of you are coming into shop today or want to place a phone order or anything, I do have a coupon for $5 off a $25 purchase or more. So again, as long as it comes up to $25, we're all good. We can take $5 off. The coupon code is Grosbeak, of course, and it's only available today, either in store or through phone order. We'll be doing a second viewing of this presentation in store at 11. So if you know anybody that's in the area that you'd like for them to see this, feel free for them to stop by. But keep in mind, I also move these presentations over to YouTube later, so it's easier for people that don't use Facebook to view them whenever as well. So again, with the resources, a lot of the videos and photos and audio, all that kind of stuff came from MacaulayLibrary.org, where everybody from around the world updates their records and sightings of these birds, so you can get a lot of good information on behaviors, or at least witnessing those behaviors that you may not have been able to see before. Allaboutbirds.org is also a great resource with, again, Cornell Lab of Ornithology that provides very generalized information of a lot of the stuff I talked about today, so you can always check that stuff out as well too at any time you'd like. So with that said, once again, I hope you guys are having a lot of fun with the migration season so far. It's still staying very busy. Hummingbirds are definitely still moving in. I heard my first wood thrush this morning, which is my favorite thing. I absolutely love them. So of course, in a few weeks as well, I have no doubt we'll see some grosbeaks coming through too. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have a great day, a great weekend. Enjoy the birds, and I will